G'day everyone, the army is the most important element of the game for you as a new player to understand in Hearthstone 4. All other aspects serve to enhance it or benefit it in some way, whether it's the Navy and Air Force, your industry, production, everything. Today I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know as a beginner to get you comfortable and confident with the army, and stick around to the end of the video for a bonus tip. But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by me and my merch store. I've got a whole range of comfortable and stylish designs available now for you guys to purchase. I curated this myself, taking into consideration the best quality, durability, and sustainability. And I've currently got 4 different styles for you to choose from on a variety of products, from your classic tees to hoodies, mugs, and these sick corduroy caps and more. So if you're wanting to support the channel and get something in return, please head to the link in the description to check out the store. The first thing you need to know is that units in this game are called divisions. Your divisions are what you use to attack and invade enemy nations and defend your own from enemy attack. They're shown by these rectangular icons on the map. If you can't see them, be sure to press F1 or this icon in the bottom right of your screen to view the army view. Each icon denotes a single division, and you can select them individually by left-clicking on them or by dragging a selection around multiple to create a group. You can right-click anywhere on the map to move your divisions to that tile, or province as it's called in the game. This isn't the main way that you'll be commanding your units, however. In Hearthstone 4, you'll mostly be using armies, a collection of divisions, and army orders to keep your units organized. Select a group of divisions and left-click on the New Army button at the bottom middle of your screen. If you've just started a new game, you can also hold Shift and left-click on this red man notification at the top of your screen to select all unassigned divisions. Once you've created your army, you'll see that there's now a small menu with different orders available. I'll explain all of these in a moment, but first we need to assign a general to lead our army. On the top left of our screen is the Army Information panel. Here you can see all the divisions grouped in this army in the list form, as well as summary by type here. In the top left, you can see the empty portrait and the click to assign prompt. Left click on that to see the list of available generals. They each have their own unique traits as shown here, as well as different stats in the categories of attack, defense, planning, and logistics. Select any of these generals to lead your army by left-clicking on them. You can now see at the bottom of your screen and in the top left of the army panel, your general has been assigned. You can see here for me that this general currently has 30 out of 24 divisions assigned under his command. Typically, the maximum capacity a general can have is 24 divisions, so we need to move some of these to a new commander. To do so, just select 6 divisions by holding Shift and left-clicking on them in the list. You can also double-click on a division type to select all divisions of that type. Or if you want to split your army evenly in half, you can press this button or the S hotkey. I'm going to choose any divisions which have an icon different to the helmet, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Once we've selected up the 6 divisions, we can left-click on the Create New Army button again to separate these divisions out into a new group. Now, our previous army is commanding 24 out of 24, meaning that they won't suffer the combat penalties for going over the cap. We can assign a new general to this army now, but what I'm going to do is look at the type of divisions that I have in this army. We've got 3 tank divisions, 1 motorized division, so I'm going to select this general, which has the Armor Officer trait. You can click on the Details button here to view the full list of traits that your generals can earn. Traits will make generals more effective in certain scenarios and while leading certain types of divisions. I won't go into this now, I have a separate video breaking this down which I'll link in the description, but as von Manstein has the Armor Officer trait, he will get more experience towards the Panzer Leader trait when commanding the armor divisions in combat. Essentially, we want to try and pair up their divisions to the generals depending on the traits that they have. While you're super new and learning, I wouldn't worry too much about this, but definitely start doing this later as you become more comfortable. Now we have 2 armies, we can further organize them under a field marshal. Select one of the armies by left-clicking on it, and then left-click on this larger icon to the left of them to create a new army group. Then select the other army and then right-click on that large blank field marshal portrait to assign it to that army group. Selecting the army group button now, you can assign a field marshal just like we did with the general. Now, his stats and bonuses will also apply to the divisions as well as those of your generals. Now that your divisions are organized, let's talk about army orders. The frontline order is the one you'll use the most, so select your army by left-clicking on the general portrait or the army icon, and then left-click on the frontline order, and now you'll see a bunch of flashing dotted lines around the borders of your nation. Left-click on any of these to place your frontline order. Once placed, your divisions will automatically move from wherever they are in the world to this frontline order, even from overseas, spreading themselves out evenly along this line. You can see any of your orders as shown by this weird looking like squiggle line. with the notches in it, and this will also tell you in this tiny writing here how many divisions are assigned, as well as the name of the army, which you can also see in the very top of the army info panel. The benefit of using a frontline order is that, firstly, as you advance into enemy territory when at war, your units will automatically move along and balance themselves on the front line, making sure you don't leave any gaps for the enemy to push into, and it's also infinitely easier to use than by manually trying to move your divisions around yourself. Now that they're in place, you can see that they're all organized in each of the provinces along the border with this other country. So in Hearts of Iron 4, divisions can only attack into adjacent provinces or tiles, but we'll talk about combat a bit more later. When you place a frontline order, it'll cover the whole border between yours and the other nation, but it won't extend beyond that into other countries' borders, for example. You can have front lines of multiple armies assigned to the same border, and to delete any orders, not just frontline orders, you can left click on the bin icon and then left click on the order that you want to delete. You can also just right click the bin to delete all orders that are assigned to that army. If you want, you can also draw partial front lines by holding right click as you are placing the order and dragging it along where you want them to be. This is super handy if you have your tank divisions and you want to concentrate them in a particular area. If the order needs to be adjusted, you can use the edit mode button. So you hold right click and drag to adjust the way the order is, the same as if you were doing a custom order for the first time. If the provinces are highlighted green as you're dragging the order, that means that you will have 100% coverage across the whole front. You will have a division in every province. If it turns yellow, that means that you are going to have between 50 to 100% coverage, whereas if it turns red, that means that you're going to have less than 50% coverage along the front line. You generally always want to make sure you're in the green. Once you've created a front line, you can then select the offensive line order to create a battle plan for where you want your army to attack. Simply left click on the order and then right click and hold on the map where you want your army to go. Once you're at war, all you need to do is click on this green arrow above the army portrait to activate the order, and your troops will automatically start attacking. Oh my goodness. Sorry about the notifications. Frontlines and offensive plans are the two main orders that you'll need as a beginner to play the game. As you practice and get more comfortable with how these orders work, then you can start utilizing the remaining orders, which I'll go through now. The first thing I need you to do though, before we go through the rest of the orders, is just to leave a like on the video and subscribe so you can see more. And also do me a huge favor and let me know in the comments what other topics that you need help with, so that way I can make sure I cover them in future videos. Now, from left to right with the remaining orders, we have the exercise button. All of your divisions have an experience level ranging from 1 through 5, with each level providing either a combat bonus or a penalty. You can see your division's current experience level here. For new divisions like these that are deployed at level 1, they provide a minus 25% combat penalty. Level 2 units have no buff or penalty. Level 3 units have a 25% combat bonus. Level 4 has a 50% bonus, and level 5 has a 75% bonus. Your troops gain experience through combat or through being exercised, which is really, really important to do. So make sure your new troops are experienced before going into battle. Left click the exercise button to start them training. While exercising, divisions will train up to a maximum level of 3, giving you that sweet 25% combat buff. They will be taking a small amount of attrition, just 5%, meaning they'll be losing a small amount of equipment each day, but trust me, it's worth the cost. They'll also give you a small trickle of army XP once they reach level 3 to compensate you for your loss. Your troops take higher attrition when exercising in mountains or other harsh terrain, so make sure that you aren't wasting equipment by ensuring your divisions are located on plains or forest tiles and only exercising them until they've reached level 3. You can do this automatically by holding shift when you left click the exercise button. If you see the little circle and cross icon, your divisions will exercise until they reach level 3 and then they'll stop. Next, we have the execution settings. This is not for performing capital punishment. This is for how your division will use their battle plans, ranging from careful execution, where your army will only attack if they have a significant chance of winning the battle, balanced, which is the default setting, and aggressive, where your army will attack pretty much always regardless of the chance of victory. I encourage you to play around with these settings a little bit while you're in game to see how they work differently. While you're learning though, balanced is a good place to start. It gives you something measurable. The cohesion setting will affect how much your troops shuffle and reorganize along the front while they advance. Flexible is the default and places no restriction on movement. Your troops will always move around to try and keep the front line as balanced as possible. Balanced keeps your troops from moving long distances, so your troops won't move from like the top here to the bottom, but they'll still reinforce, and while rigid, they will pretty much just leave your troops in place without advancing. I would always just set this to flexible and maybe experiment with it later. I have had mixed results and find divisions often get left behind on the balanced and rigid settings. So to be honest, you can set and forget this. The naval invasion order allows you to have your troops attack across the seas. To set an order, left click on the naval invasion button, left click on one of your ports as shown by the anchor icon or highlighted with the blue, and then right click on where you want your divisions to go with their naval invasion. Then hit enter. If you hover over the execute battle plan button, you can see in the tooltip how long it will take to prepare, as well as if you're missing any required convoys and the naval supremacy you need in the sea zones to get your naval invasion to go through. I'll explain more about the Navy and naval invasions in my naval guide, who would have thought, but once the plan is ready, activate the order and your divisions will set off over the seas to conduct an amphibious invasion of the target location. I do have a video on special forces and how to best use them, which I'll link below. Please watch that after this if you want to see how to best use the naval invasions and paradrops, which is the next order on the list. We've already talked about front lines and offensive orders. Next is the Spearhead. This works very similarly to the offensive order, except a spearhead is best used when trying to encircle enemy troops or make a deep push into the enemy lines. When using spearhead orders, try drawing them to link up two armies attacking from different places, like so. Next, we have fallback lines. These are used to essentially create a front line where no border exists and are super helpful to place divisions on plains tiles or to prevent extra attrition, bringing your army to a more defendable position which isn't right along a front line, for example, behind a river or something. To draw a front line, just left click on the order, right click and drag where you want it to go, and then your divisions will go from wherever they are in the world to that location as fast as possible. It's also a really good way to bring divisions together if they happen to be scattered all over the world for whatever reason. So if you've lost some units and you don't know where they are, try using a fallback line to reorganize them. Next is area defense, which you can use to guard your ports, coastlines, airports, and other important locations. This is most useful for defending your ports along your coastlines from enemy invasions. To set up this order, left click on the area defense button, and then you can select which types of buildings or tiles that your troops will defend. I would just left click on the naval bases icon, and then all you need to do is left click on the different states, and your troops will garrison any provinces which have that building type that you've selected in there. Simply hit space and they will move off on their merry way. That's all the army orders that you have access to, but there are two more buttons here, the assign and unassign buttons. You can use these to add and remove divisions from a particular order. All you need to do is select the divisions that you want to remove and then click the unassign button. Now you'll see the little red exclamation mark next to them or on their icon in the army view panel. And that shows that they currently have no order assigned. If you want to assign them back to the order, just click on the button again and then left click on the order, or hold control and left click on the order that you want to assign them to. This is super helpful if you want to separate one army out into two different orders. For example, if we click on the frontline order and then place a new frontline on a different part of the map, the frontline order shows up a little bit differently. This means that there are no divisions assigned to it. You can then select other divisions by whichever method you prefer and either left click here to unassign them and then assign them to the new frontline order as we did before, or you can hold control and left click on the new frontline and the new order. They'll automatically switch over from the previous order to the new one. This works for front lines, offensive orders, naval invasions, everything. Now, everything that I just showed you about commanding your troops with armies, you can also do with field marshal orders or army groups. All you need to do is make sure that your armies have no orders assigned to them, and then just make sure that you're left clicking on the field marshal portrait to select the entire army group. They should all be highlighted. Now that you've selected all those divisions, whatever order you draw will be commanded as an army group. It doesn't add any extra bonuses or stats, but it does make it a bit easier when commanding large amounts of divisions. There's a couple of things that you should know when creating a field marshal frontline. When you place the order, you'll see on the front line here that there's a solid line at the rear, and then there are the normal looking army frontline orders to the front. You can go ahead and left click on the edit mode button and then click and drag that line to change the concentration of your divisions in that field marshal order. You can also go ahead and draw individual army attack orders by selecting that army and then just drawing it like you normally would. So even though you've placed the frontline order as an army group, you can still command the armies separately, but they'll stay stitched together as they advance through the front, and there won't be like separations or gaps in your front line. If you want to have all of your armies mixed in together, spread evenly along the front line, when you do place your field marshal order, just hold shift as you left click on the front line, and all of your armies will be merged together and the little separate front lines will disappear. Now it'll just be a single solid army group line. All of your troops will spread evenly across the whole front. They won't be separated out by army as they were before. Like I said, this can make it a little bit easier when commanding large amounts of armies on the same front. Now you know how to organize and place orders for your armies. I need to show you how combat works. And for that, we're going to jump over to Italy, because they start the game at war with Ethiopia. And as a beginner, I would really just recommend that you play Italy over and over and practice this war with Ethiopia a few times, maybe 4 or 5 times until you're fully comfortable with commanding your armies in combat. Now, combat in Hoi 4 occurs when a division or multiple divisions attacks from one province into another. A division can only attack into a province that's adjacent to it. If we go ahead and we move them into there, or we click the attack order, all of our divisions will start to engage in battle. And when combat begins, all these bubbles will appear. To view a combat that's currently ongoing, all you need to do is left click on one of these bubbles. The bubble itself will tell you some info about the battle as well. Essentially, this is on a scale from 0 to 100. When the number in the bubble gets to 100, that means that you've won the battle. When it gets to 0, it means that you've lost the battle. When you win a battle, if you're attacking, your troops will move into the province that they're attacking. When you lose a battle where you are being attacked, where you're the defender, your troops will be pushed out and retreat back into an adjacent province. The color of the bubble will give you some insight into what's happening. If it's green, that means that you're winning. If it's red, it means that you're losing. It's pretty straightforward. In the tooltip, it will also tell you how long the battle is estimated to go for. So this one, less than a day, because we're just that good. If we click on the bubble, it will tell us a lot of important information here. Firstly, you'll see the general for each army that's shown on either side, as well as the flags for them of who's currently in combat. Then at the top, you'll see what type of terrain the combat is taking place in. When you hover over it, the tooltip will tell you a whole bunch of important info, such as the combat width and any different modifiers which are taking place in this battle. On this section here, we can see the total combat width of the battle, as well as the amount of combat width that you are filling with your divisions, both for yourself and the enemy. Each province in Hearthstone 4 has a different combat width depending on the type of terrain it is. I'll put a graphic up on screen now. You can pause the video, read this, or screenshot it for yourself. Essentially, the combat width will determine how many of your divisions are able to fit into a particular battle. If you go over the combat width, your divisions will suffer increasing penalties the larger they are over the limit. Now, we can see here in this battle that if we hover over the combat width, the limit is 70 as we are in hilly terrain. We can see on the left that we're filling 48 out of that available 70 combat width. The Ethiopians, they only have 20 combat width out of 70. So they could theoretically fit another 5 of their divisions in here because they've got 2, making 20, they're 10 combat width each. The more divisions that you have in a battle, the more stats you'll have from your divisions and the more attack you'll be inflicting on the enemies and the more likely you are to win that combat. One thing you might notice as well is the combat width per additional direction here. It says it's plus 35. It's always half the normal combat width, so it's easy to remember. What this means is if we attack from these other 2 provinces next to the one that we are attacking in, suddenly the combat width in this battle increases to 140. What's happening here is the initial battle from this tile to here creates 70 combat width from this being in hills. And then each additional province that we attack from adds another 35 combat width. So this allows you to just add even more divisions and even more combat stats into the battle, making us even more likely to win. So generally when you're attacking into an enemy province, you want to be attacking from as many different sides as possible. When we're looking at the combat here, you'll see that we've got all of these divisions on the left, and they will continue fighting in the battle as long as they've got organization. So organization is essentially a stat, and it determines how long your divisions can remain in combat for. Once the organization runs out, these troops will stop fighting. They'll leave the battle, and then some of our reserves down the bottom will step in and take their place. You can see down here, we've got quite a few. The Ethiopians have no reserves. So once their troops reach 0 org, which these are about to, they will be pushed out of this province. They'll lose the battle and they'll be pushed out into an adjacent tile. So you can kind of think of the goal of combat is to get the enemy troops down to 0 org and push them out of that province so your troops can move in and occupy it. In terms of the actual stats that you need to know about in combat, there are 3 main ones on each side. So soft attack is the main one, and that applies for both attackers and defenders. Hard attack also applies for both attackers and defenders. And finally, we have breakthrough for the attackers and defense for the defenders. Now, how these work is, as the attacker, your soft and hard attack are contesting the defender's defense stat, while the breakthrough stat is essentially defending against the defender's soft and hard attack in this battle. Your divisions will take damage in the battle as shown by their strength percentage here, and both the breakthrough and defense stats will determine how much damage your divisions take, as well as how much of their org is drained in combat. I hope that kind of makes sense. It is a little bit confusing if you're new to this. If you don't quite get it, just let me know in the comments. If you need me to try and explain it a different way, I can make a short or something to maybe help. There are modifiers to each of these stats which come from a variety of places. The main one for defenders is entrenchment. You can see it on your own divisions in the army information panel. The shovel and shield icon here and the bar next to it will tell you what combat bonus it provides. We can see for the Ethiopian troops, they get an additional 12% attack and defense from their entrenchment, which is gained automatically over time from your troops being stationary and digging in and various different technologies. We, however, get a 42% combat bonus from being entrenched because our technology is higher, I'm assuming, and we have a certain doctrine. So that's quite a significant bonus, almost 50% bonus to our defense. On attack, the main buff comes from planning bonus. When we create an offensive plan, like a battle plan, gradually over time, divisions will increase their planning bonus, which you can see under this bar here. As long as your troops are stationary on the front line and they have an offensive order that they're assigned to, the planning bonus will increase and it will provide a direct buff to the attack stat of your division once the battle begins. So this will deteriorate as combat goes on and as your divisions move, or if you delete the battle plan. The best practice when using battle plans is to create the plan, allow your planning bonus to fill up, which you can see again here, and then once just continue attacking until the planning bonus is depleted, and then stop your attack, wait for it to build up again, and then attack, and then rinse and repeat until you win. So we can see here in the tooltip of our soft attack icon that we are getting a 31% bonus to our attack purely from planning bonus, which is pretty significant. Those are pretty much the main things you need to know about the army in terms of combat and commanding your divisions. I've done a video which is a bit more advanced combat stats, such as encirclement and things like that, and I'll link that for you guys in the description too. But for the moment, just start out with this and see how you go. You should be pretty much all set to go ahead and defeat Ethiopia and any other nations using these skills that I've just taught you. First though, once you've won the war, you will enter the Peacedeal minigame, which is super fun. This is where you can decide what's going to happen with your victim, your opponent. On the top left, you can choose from annexing their states, liberating them as a free country, turning them into a puppet state, or installing a friendly government of your own country's ideology. It's pretty easy with the Ethiopian war. You can just select the option that you want to take, click on the drop down here, and click select all. Then you can click submit demands in the bottom right, and then confirm and exit to admire your newly conquered lands. In a peace deal where you've got multiple people on both sides, it does get a little bit more complicated, which I'll do a more detailed breakdown on that later. Now you've got all of this land over here in Africa, you're going to need some more divisions to make sure that you hold it. So the first thing you want to do is open the recruit and deploy menu, and here you'll be able to see on the right hand side a full list of all the different division types which you have available to train. You'll see the division name, their icon, then you'll see that there's a train button, and next to some of them there is also an edit button. If you click on the train button, it will create a new recruitment line for that division type. If you want to train more than one division, you can click on this add unit button and just add the number of divisions that you want to train. Once we play, we'll see that these lines here start to fill up with the required equipment needed to equip these divisions. I'll do another separate video on production and equipment, but all you need to know for now is that if you hover over this line, the tooltip will tell you what equipment you need to train this division. Once the division has enough equipment, they will start to train, which you can see on this line here. Once your divisions reach a minimum level of 20% training, you can deploy them on the map as a level 1 experienced division. Otherwise, you can wait until they reach 100% training and they'll be deployed at level 2 experience. To deploy your divisions, you simply need to left click on the No Location Set button and then left click somewhere on the map that's highlighted green. You can only deploy divisions where your home territory is. You can't deploy them overseas. Next, click on the Deploy All Lines Instantly button, and you'll now see that we've got 4 new divisions on the map, all at the level 1 experience level and quite low in org and strength. Now, these divisions will automatically reinforce, so let's just put them in a new army and exercise them until they're level 3. If you want to change the location or just reset this and have them queued up in your menu, you can right click on this location button here to clear it. You can also increase the priority of your divisions that are training by left clicking on this little button here to set it to high equipment priority. That means that all the equipment you're producing will go straight to these new divisions as opposed to reinforcing your already deployed troops. Now we'll have a really quick look at the division design function. This is quite complex, so I'll be doing a full video on this as well. The main thing you need to know is that on the right hand side, you can see all the different combat stats available for this division type. On the top left, you can change the division icon to anything you want. You can also rename it. You can change the division naming scheme, and you can also change the reinforcement priority so that this division template will get the best equipment, the worst equipment, or just standard. The main thing that you use this for is for the structure of your divisions. These icons here are the different battalions which make up the composition of your division. You can add a new battalion by clicking on the plus icon here, and then you can choose from a whole range of different options available. If we want to add a bit more infantry, we can see here as we hover over it on the right hand side what the effective change is going to be. On the very far left, you'll see that there are different support companies that we can add in. Now, these use a lot less equipment than adding something as a line battalion, but it does add a good amount of stats for what it's worth. You can see on the right hand side under the stats that there is a bar showing the hardness of this division. Currently it's at 0%. If we were to add in a single light tank, you can see that the hardness is now 8%. In battle, soft and hard attack affects a division differently depending on their hardness. Soft attack essentially targets things which are squishy. So humans, that's our infantry, artillery, anti-air, things like that. Hard attack affects anything which is armored. So that is our tanks, that is our motorized or mechanized infantry. The more armor that you have in a division, the higher that their hardness stat will be. If we have a division like this with 35% hardness, in a battle, this division will only take 65% of the soft attack damage from an enemy division, and it will take 35% of the enemy's hard attack stat. This is partly why armor divisions are so strong. Infantry usually has quite low hard attack, so in a division with really high hardness, around 80 to 90%, almost none of an infantry soft attack will be affected. When designing a division, you want it to have a little bit of a mix of soft and hard attack, so that when you come up against enemy armor, there is something you can do about it. This can get quite complicated in terms of what to do as a beginner, but a good starting point for a division template would be something, you can go something like this, which is just 20 width infantry only with engineers, artillery, and anti-air. Or you could do something like this, which has got 9 battalions of infantry, 1 artillery, or even less, 8 battalions of infantry and 1 artillery. All sorts of variations like this are a really great starting point for you while you find your feet. Once you've made your changes, you'll be able to see at the bottom of the screen what the army experience cost is to make this change. Just to be aware as well, if you are changing a division which you've already got troops deployed in the field of, when you click save, it will go ahead and update all of those divisions and they will need to be reinforced with all this new equipment. So if we were to save this, we would have to go and add in artillery to all of our existing infantry divisions of this template. What you can do instead is click the duplicate button, create a new design, and then that way it will show up in your list and you can now just start training those new divisions without ruining all the ones you currently have deployed. I know that we've covered off a lot today, but since you made it to the end, let's go through the bonus tip. If you're ever unsure of what something does, all you need to do is hover your mouse over it and a tooltip will appear explaining that function for you. This is probably one of the best things about Hearts of Iron 4, and it works on pretty much everything. It'll show you the base info, and if you hold a little bit longer, it'll give you way more information. It's a great way while you're learning to sort of understand a little bit more about what's going on with the game, especially with things that are unfamiliar for you. And just another free tip while I'm at it, you can easily control time in game by pressing and, double pressing spacebar to start and stop the game time. And you can also use the plus and minus keys on your number pad if you've got a full-size keyboard to adjust the speed that the game runs at. There's a whole lot more to learn about Hearthstone 4, so stick around and watch this next video to continue your Hoi 4 journey. Thanks for watching.